So I need you to stop thinking about conflict as something that needs to be avoided and as something that is a transaction, and that it requires different things in order for it to pass and be dealt with in an effective manner. I need you to start thinking about conflict as though it's something that's inevitable, because it is. Conflict is inevitable because we come from two different, like everyone is different. We all have that nature versus nurture, okay? We have our environment that we grew up with and our genetics that have contributed, sorry, I can't speak today, contributed to who we are as a person. And when we get into a situation with somebody who doesn't have the same thing, even our siblings, they're a different combo of that, okay? Because their environment's going to be different. We're still going to have conflict. It's still going to happen because we are different. There are differences. And so conflict just needs to be seen as a transaction of setting boundaries or a transaction of communication. So conflict. When you have conflict, what it does is it teaches you how to address that situation. It provides you a space in which you can create boundaries. So it's really a positive thing. It is something where it provides a way to communicate with somebody who's a little bit different. And it's a learning experience. Okay, so I already said teaching, but it is a learning experience, and I need you to start thinking about it that way. When I was an undergrad, I got the opportunity to work with the Honors College where I went to school, and I worked with a professor, and she did research on childhood development and emotional intelligence. And I did that with her for, a year, 2 years? 2 years. And in the meantime, I got to create my own research project where I looked at the instances of conflict and their social intelligence and what that looked like. And so what we found is that it's something that you don't think. The kids who have more conflict have higher social intelligence. And it's because it was a learning experience. It's a learning experience. And that's kind of what we alluded to. Now, you can't assume causality. It's just, it's a contributed to. And so conflict seemed to contribute to social intelligence. And so you need to start looking at that conflict between people as a method of communication. And when you do that, it becomes a little bit less scary. So here's what happened. If you're conflict avoidant, let's think of it like a bank account, right? Transactional. You're conflict avoidant. You're inevitably going to have conflict, but you keep pulling out of that bank. Every time that you have that conflict, you pull out of that bank and you refuse to deposit the communication back in order to settle that conflict and keep moving forward. So you avoid it like the plague. You pretend like it doesn't exist. It does exist. You pretending doesn't change how it is. When you decide that you are going to be grown up about the situation, because that's what's happening, is you're reverting back to a childhood situation where you're thinking that if you run away from it, it's not going to exist. It's kind of like a Santa Claus situation, right? Because if we run away, Santa Claus doesn't exist. It's the Easter Bunny. So hopefully no children are watching this. But so basically you need to think about conflict as a transaction, because it's going to happen. It's the bills that you have to pay. Conflict are the bills in order to live. And if you don't have enough money to cover the bills, then you don't need to move into that house, right? You've got to cover the bills. And the money that you have to cover up the bills, or to put towards bills, because that's the conflict, that's going to be your love language, what you do with that person. So if that person enjoys gifts, that's their thing. Then when you have conflict, you need to make sure that you communicate, but that you come back with a love language and you show loving compassion towards each other. And so conflict is inevitable. The fact that we can't, we expect somebody to just not have any conflict with us, that is so irrational. And it's not fair to that person. So for me, it's like if we have conflict, I want you to come and communicate it with me and tell me what's going on. That's what I want. And generally, I'll be really rational about it, and I'll give you space. I'm going to give you space in which you can communicate those things to me, and I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to just bleh, bye. That's not the adult way of approaching conflict. I'm going to listen to the conflict. I'm going to process the conflict. I'm going to decide what boundaries need to be put up for the conflict so that it doesn't happen again. And then I'm going to talk to you about it and be like, these are my boundaries. This shouldn't happen. And then if it continues to happen again and again, it's not like a little conflict. Little conflicts are going to happen again and again and again. Like, you're going to forget to do the dishes, and you're going to forget to put your socks in the dirty clothes, and you're going to forget to get something for your people whenever you're coming home, or you're going to make mistakes, but it's the big ones that are huge transactions. And so when you lie to your partner, you are making a withdrawal from that bank account that will bankrupt you if they find out. It'll bankrupt you, so you'll have to put a whole lot back in. If you cheat on your partner, you're going to have to, that's a transaction. That's a bankruptcy there with that. If you bring your partner a gift and their love language is gifts, that is a deposit, right? And then if you spend quality time and you're really present, you don't have your phones, that might also be a deposit, so you can communicate. And so you have to really think about these as transactions on your relationship. So each decision that you make, you've got to understand that there are consequences, even if you pretend like there's no conflict. Because conflict is inevitable. You're going to have that. It's how you handle it that tells me how emotionally mature you are. If you can come and you can speak to me about it and communicate about it, I tend to make room. If you decide you're not going to communicate with me about it and I find out about it, that's when there's a withdrawal that I don't know that I can cover. And I think everybody kind of feels this way. Or if you don't, send me your secrets, because I sure need them. It's living in denial. You can't deny conflict. You can't deny the hurt feelings. You can't deny your actions and what they do to people. But you can fix it by approaching that conflict, by communicating about it, and by making deposits that may cover the transaction so that you aren't bankrupting yourself and the other person in this relationship. And so just remember, and it's a teaching moment. It's not anything else. Because you don't know, sometimes you don't know what that person gets hurt by. And if you do know and you're still doing it, oh, good luck to you. But it's a transaction. It's a lesson. It's a method of setting boundaries. And so conflict, it's inevitable. It is a way to gain social intelligence, emotional intelligence. It's a way to have relationships and have functional relationships where they actually are going to continue and serve the best purpose and go the distance. Instead of somebody who runs away from all the conflict, you're never going to have a long-lasting relationship that way. It's just not going to happen. Take it from somebody who has worked with so many people who have decided to run away from conflict. I'm going to tell you, that is the worst possible approach. Because you're still making that withdrawal. It's what you do with it that's the important thing. But anyway. Start changing the narrative. Change the narrative on that one. Because conflict is not a bad thing. It's just part of being a human. Okay? And there are healthy ways to deal with it. But anyway, that is the most weird looking heart I have ever loved you all. There we go. I couldn't make it. Heart. Love you. There we go. Bye.